Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 48 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasanowski, and I am the writer of Gender Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rust Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have some awesome polls for you today, including one that we're pulling from back in time. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Last week we had a real bloated poll list, so we decided to put off Hack/Body Bags #1. So we'll be talking about that this week. We'll also be talking about Wolverine Revenge #3, Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween #2, It Happened on Hyde Street, Devour, and The Hour of the Wolf #1.
And if you enjoy any of those reviews or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. You can find me personally on all those same socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm everywhere as Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's get into the news. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different for this week's news because I could not find any good neus. So
only bad news. Everyone's dead.
Everyone's dead. So instead, I have pulled up the top 10 selling books from this past week, which is the week that we'll be talking about books for in this episode. And I want you to try to guess the top 10.
Oh, jeez.
I will reveal things as we go. We'll talk about what kind of has gotten the top 10 sales. This is Bleeding Cool does this list based on like a survey of stores, and instead of giving the exact numbers, they give everything in a ratio compared to like how much the number one sold. That would be like 100 ratio. The top selling book, then everything else is like this sold 50% of what the top selling book.
Gotcha. So this is the highest percentage sold compared to the first issue. Or is this?
Yeah. This is the highest selling by quantity. It's
just,
instead of listing the amount sold, they list it in comparison to the top selling book of this.
Okay, but it is by quantity.
Yes, but the first place will get a ratio of 100, and then every other place will get what it sold compared to that first.
Oh, I think you mean compared to #1 in its series.
No. What they sold.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
It's based on a census instead of
actually
talking to every store, so they don't have exact numbers, but they have percentages.
So I'm gonna say that the #1 book last week was
the books we're talking about this week. So books in our polls for later this episode. Those are the books you're thinking about here.
Those are the ones I'm thinking about. It was a light pull list week.
It was a light pull list week.
I'm going to say at the very top was Batman Long Halloween.
No, but it is on the list. That's number 3 on the list.
Okay.
Selling 68.1 ratio compared to. So
gotcha. Yeah.
Compared to the #1 sold.
Which is
DC
pretty low. That's pretty low compared to the top one for #3.
The top one's pretty ahead of the field. The #2 is at about 80%.
I'm going to say #2 I think is... I'm trying to remember what else came out last week.
Just think of what was on the wall. I'll start throwing you things when you start sputtering, but you can absolutely get at least one more on this list.
Okay, I think #4 is Wolverine Revenge.
No, Wolverine Revenge #3 is #1.
Really?
Yes.
I was not expecting a #3 to be the top book.
Yeah, you got things like Red Label Double Up too, though. So you got to.
Oh, okay. So okay, sure.
So they get juice there. Marvel
I'm gonna call some shenanigans on that, but that's fine.
But they juice.
It was #2 Hyde Street. I feel like Hyde Street #1 got a lot of positive attention.
Did not crack the top 10. Devour rather.
That makes sense since it's kind of
all DC and Marvel with one exception.
Jeez, what were the new all-in #1s?
The publisher
was Superman this past week. All-in Superman?
I don't know if Superman was this past week. It is not on the list.
Gotcha. Oh, jeez, I don't know any of the Marvel things that came out. Did the Superman book come out?
No. There is a Superman adjacent book in the top 10. I'll give you that information here.
Is it the jumping week for Action Comics?
It is. There you go.
Okay,
Action Comics 1073 is in the 10th place. I don't know if it's the first issue. I'm actually guessing that's not because it's all the way down in 10th place. or tied for 9th place rather at 32% of
I think
first
it is
place.
the all-in. Or no, because last week was still October. So I think it was still the all-in.
But like, isn't Action Comics coming out weekly?
Is it?
I think now. Yeah, I think Mark Waid's run.
I don't know. I was pulling Superman, not Action Comics.
Yeah, no, there's some Mark Waid's run. I think is coming out either weekly or bi-weekly. Like
he's a wild man, an absolute wild man.
So yeah, so that's tied for 9th. In the 10th slot though on our list. So you've gotten 2 DC and 1 Marvel. You have
and they're all DC or Marvel.
And there's 1 Titan.
Okay. What, Doctor Who? What else does Titan put out these days?
I feel like it should be pretty obvious. Are
they doing the Godzilla book?
No, that's IDW.
That's IDW.
But there are, I believe, 4 more Marvel books for you to get, and 2 more DC books.
This is so deeply rude because I literally have no idea what came out last week.
I can start throwing you the books here, and we can see if you can try.
I'll try to slot them in.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're missing number 2 still, right? So I'm chomping at the bit for.
Yeah. So let me start reading out the things here, and the thing is, I'm gonna try to read these not in any specific order compared to where they are. Yeah, so the odds that I miss one are extremely high.
That's fine.
I'm jumping around here.
That's fine.
So we have Nyx number 4 from Marvel. We have Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Trees number 1 from DC. We have Conan the Barbarian from Titan. We have Amazing Spider-Man 60 from Marvel. We have
I'm going to assume Amazing Spider-Man is number 2.
That is correct. Yeah, so you got the top 3 now.
Yeah, the top 3.
That was about 80% on ratio, despite being an $8 issue. So number 2, despite being a solid $2 more than Wolverine Revenge in that first slot. So
well, it depends if you're getting the Red Label one, right?
I think that's true. That's true. The Red Label one's $1 more. You're right. I believe there are 2 that I still have not told you, which are the second printing of Absolute Batman number 1 and Phases of the Moon Knight number 3. So
okay, I'm gonna say that I think number 4. So this is after Long Halloween.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be Absolute Batman.
That is incorrect.
Damn it.
Do you want me to tell you what slot Absolute Batman's in now? Or
sure, yeah.
All right, Absolute Batman's number 5. You were off by 1 spot.
I was close.
That's at 38.5 on the ratio, so about 38.5% of
Okay, I'm going to say that I'm tempted to go with the Poison Ivy thing because I was tempted to buy the Poison Ivy thing, which makes me think that other people, namely the people who have been keeping up with Poison Ivy.
Katie is 100% in tune with what
everyone
wants.
Yes. That's why I'm surrounded by Marvel paraphernalia.
Yes.
Hey, I've got one. You can't see him, but there's Spider-Verse Steelbook up there.
I don't believe you.
There he is. He's right there. He's right there.
I don't think that's real. I don't think that's real.
I just keep this little light on so nobody knows that I have a Marvel bias. Yeah. Okay, so I think number 4 is... I'm going to go with Moon Knight.
That is incorrect.
Fuck, I'm not good at this.
Phases of the Moon Knight number 3 is tied with Action Comics 1073 for 9.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Well, I mean, I'll be right eventually, and then I'll have the rest of the list.
I feel like Absolute Batman was a good guess, but you're kind of swinging and missing compared to what's actually in 4th here, which I feel like should be obvious from what I was listing. If you actually remember everything that I listed. Which there's a very good chance that you don't.
Okay, I don't even remember what books we're pulling, and I read them 2 hours ago.
So I believe at this point you still have that you have not.
I'm going to guess that number 4 is Nyx.
It is not. That is number 6 at 37.2% on the ratio.
Okay, I'm doing really, really, really good. Yeah. I'm going to assume it's not Poison Ivy since you said that I might have forgotten it, and I did bring that up. So you're using my context clues. Is it Conan?
It's not. Conan is in 8th place at 33.4% on the ratio.
I mean, you certainly said other books.
I mean, at this point, it's literally there are only 2 books left.
And one of them is Poison Ivy, and the other is number 4.
Yeah. So Poison Ivy, based on the context clues, there is number 7. Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Tree's number 1 at 33.5% on the ratio. And in 4th place is Ultimate X-Men number 8, ringing up 63.5%.
I don't know if you listed that one. Roll the tape.
I did.
We don't roll the tape, but
I'm gonna just replay that in the episode right now. There you go, everybody. You can see that Katie is very wrong, and I definitely said that.
Well, but the win for me is that you now have more editing work to do.
That's fair. Unfortunate.
All right. Well, wonderful. Good for Wolverine. I'm shocked that at number 3 it's still the top selling, but I guess
it's been selling gangbusters, man. And I think the red label shit really helps that because you got people that get the extra copy.
And then what was number 2?
Number 2 is Amazing Spider-Man.
Right. 2. Okay. I understand Spider-Man selling Batman.
That book has been getting it still sells really freaking well, man. So
Well, I mean, it's Spider-Man. He's always gonna sell.
It's Spider-Man.
Well, now that I have been thoroughly humiliated,
which is always the goal of the news section, we can move right into the polls.
All right, gang, we have some sweet polls to talk about today. We've got, as we just heard, the number 1 selling book of last week, according to the Bleeding Cool census, Wolverine Revenge number 3. We've got Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween number 2. We've got Hour of the Wolf, number 1. We've got It Happened on Hyde Street, Devour, number 1. And we've got Hack/Body Bags, number 1.
I feel the need to say that Devour is not very nicely, compared to a lot of publishers that do still label number 1s on one-shots. Not labeled the number 1 is specifically labeled the one-shot very nicely.
We love that. I think IDW says one-shot on theirs very consistently.
Yeah, I think it's DC and Marvel who usually put the number 1s, even on one-shots.
Which is dumb.
Good reason.
I'm sure the good reason is because they think it's going to attract in new readers, but I feel like a one-shot would do that just as...
Right? Yeah. You're not even then, they don't feel like they're on the hook for anything. It's I can just read this. It's oh yeah, fantastic. Anyway.
Alas. That's not all we picked up this week. Jimbird, what else did you get?
It is almost all I picked up this week. I
have one other book.
I have Sectars number 1, which is the newest chapter of the Nancelverse from Oni Press, which I have been into since RoboForce. So, yeah, I'm going to continue with that universe.
I also only have one other book. It's Mud and Madness from Blood Moon Comics.
Interesting. Is that a one-shot? Is that a... I know they
haven't read it yet.
Okay. It is a first issue, and you are unsure if it is a one-shot or a...
Correct.
One thing. Okay. They do a decent amount of one. I think they also do they do everything. I think they do 2-issue miniseries sometimes.
I think a lot of what they do is 4-issuers though. I think them and Magma Press are both hitting that sweet.
Magma is committed to the 4-issuer. I know Blood Moon does.
Mostly committed, because I think this past week was also the trade of Death Comes for a Toymaker, wasn't it?
Yes. That is their one trade only. But in terms of the issue things, they've not done a series or a one-shot or anything that's not a 4-issue mini so far. So, in any case, Katie, order.
In the court. I think we talk about hacks. Let's talk about Batman first, because for some reason I love to lead with DC.
Batman. Mr. Batman.
Mr. Batman, yes. Mr. Batman the Long'un. We can then jump to Wolverine. And then...
Will he or won't he Wolverine?
He Wolverine, I would think. And then we shall hack the slash, Hour the Wolf, and then happen ourselves on Hyde Street.
Is everything this week is a different publisher, isn't it?
Sure is. Wild indeed.
Yes, that is correct. No, it's not correct. Hack slash and Hyde Street.
You're right. They're both Image. I was thinking Boost Machine.
Katie does not know what an imprint is. Never will accept imprints as a thing.
It's more that I respect them as their own identities.
I'm just going back to, I don't remember what it was. You were guessing something, and I had said that it was an Image book, and you like did not get a Skybound. It was either like Skybound or Spawn within that, because like
yeah, because like
you were just like
technically it's an Image book, but more technically it's a Skybound book.
And yeah,
Like, I would not refer to a Vertigo book as a DC book. That would be misleading.
I might. Like, you wouldn't call an old, like, Constantine book that was Vertigo a DC book?
No, I'd call it a Vertigo book, because it has a different set of expectations. Which is the point of an imprint. So I'm sorry that I respect imprints. That's for you, Robert Kirkman.
Who publishes Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees?
IDW, right?
They have an imprint. It's Top Shelf Productions.
Did they do this Beneath the Trees, or is that just the next
I think they do all their creator are under Top Shelf Productions.
I believe you. And I would refer to it by that if I had paid attention. But I wasn't looking at the publisher of Beneath the Trees.
I don't think they even have a logo for Top Shelf, though. Like, it's just like, it's a thing within, I think, the way they run, but it's not like a thing on.
Which is, a slightly different story. But
they call it their creator-owned imprint if you like go to that.
And like the thing is that that's totally well and good, but make it a brand then. But speaking of, so we will do Hyde Street after Hack Slash and then end on the Hour of the Wolf.
We have been derailed. I am so sorry, people. This is my fault completely.
It is.
But I had to go there for no
He
reason.
cannot resist an opportunity to make fun of me. It's very rude.
That is correct.
It's incredibly rude, and I have never mocked him in my life. This is an unequal friendship.
I'm sorry? I beg your fucking pardon?
Anyway, we're gonna go talk about Batman. Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, Issue 2. Hoping to bring an end to the terrible tragedy that has struck Gotham, Batman and Robin descend into the hellish depths of Arkham Asylum, seeking answers, and come face to face with some of the city's most nefarious criminals. The writer here is Jeff Loeb of Batman The Long Halloween, Superman and Batman, and the Hulk. The artist is Klaus Janson of Daredevil, Detective Comics, and The Punisher. The colorist is Dave Stewart, and the letterer is Richard Starkings. Jay.
Yes.
I don't remember where we landed. We really liked the art on the first new issue of The Last Halloween.
I think we were pretty hot.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're in a pretty intrigued place going into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were pretty positive on the first.
I think so too. Yeah.
I'm a little down going.
Okay, that's fair.
This issue, I still enjoyed this issue just as a starting point. I thought this was still. I think Jeff Loeb writing Batman and Batman universe characters feels, and we talked about this all the way back in the issue 0. It just feels so natural, and it feels so much like just reading the characters versus reading any like one writer's interpretation or anything like that. So characterization is like just a 10 out of 10 whenever I'm reading a Jeff Loeb Batman book, which is such a nice starting point because it means you're never going to like dip into why the hell am I even reading this territory. So that's a great like baseline. And I also really like Klaus Janson's art on this. I think so far the different switching artists has not hindered this book in any way, shape, or form. I think there's a lot of really great art in this book. Really like the kind of opening and the vibe of that. It was super cool.
Yes.
And I really do like seeing Robin with Batman. It's very nice. But let me get to where I think this fails, which is actually in trying to mimic the Long Halloween formula. I feel like I think the month jump really hurt here.
Yeah.
I thought it was really weird to see Batman like following up on leads from the first issue after a month in like an investigative way. It just felt really weird. It felt like a lot of things, like the conversation with Catwoman and the investigate, like all of these things that felt like, oh, these should be immediate follow-up of the first issue, are happening a month later just because that's the format of the book. And I think that just really, really hurt the reading experience and really hurt the flow of the series. And there's just like also a sense of like limited movement in this issue, I guess, is like how I'd put it. Like, I don't think like something happens that I don't want to spoil because it's kind of like how the Long Halloween works. It's like our big thing of this issue that each issue's kind of going to have. That didn't even feel particularly game
not
changing
at all
to me. But especially if you take that and put that to the side, it felt like we made literally no progress in this issue. And I think it really just is feeling like that format that for the long Halloween just felt so perfect, and it really was something that made that series unique and special. Like artificially trying to replicate it for this feels like it's going to be one of the things that really hinders this series, more so than what I thought was going to be the thing that hindered the series the most, which is the rotating artist.
Yeah.
Which so far I think has been a slam dunk. They've done
agreed. Yeah, I think that you're really hitting the nail on the head with the kind of like zoomed out issues with it. Because I really enjoyed the zoomed in parts. Like, because one of the things that's going on is James Gordon's son, James. Gordon's son, James.
From the first issue that we can finally
talk about. Being abducted, which is like a really big deal. And like, maybe I watched too much like police show content as a kid, but it's like, okay, you're outside the 24 hours, that kid's fucking dead.
Yeah. No, that was the rough thing where it was like,
exactly, it's like picking that up on 2 weeks later,
a month later. Like this man's child has been missing for a month. I feel like that should be way higher than like, oh, it's issue 2, so he hasn't been missing that long yet. Like, no, you jumped a month.
Exactly. And like Catwoman had this thing where like her bullet wound had not healed properly and was like infected or some shit, which is why she was at Arkham. And it's like, okay, that suddenly feels like deeply convenient instead of like
a month later you're following up on the same wound that you got in the first like.
And like you just so happen to be there at the same time that Batman is there, because like I'm a big forgiver of like narrative convenience. Like yes,
that's why this is happening.
Exactly. But that one was just a little much when, like you said, it feels like it doesn't feel like it was initially written to have taken place weeks later.
Yeah.
Like the things that happen feel very immediate.
It feels like a typical comic where it's like, oh, you jumped a week and not you jumped a
exactly. Or even like a night. Like, there's so many things happening that I really like. Like, I really enjoy the art. I really enjoy they seem to start to set up a little bit of a subplot with Robin in this one, with the way that he interacts with Calendar Man. And I actually really loved the sequence of the big thing that happened that we will not talk about because spoilers. I really like the sequence of it, but it just feels like none of it moved the plot along. And it's like, okay, Batman, it's weeks later and you still have no leads.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I feel like you're cutting him slack with weeks. Like, this is a full...
I'm saying weeks because Jim was specifically saying weeks.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's right before Thanksgiving, so I think it's 3 weeks instead of a month.
Yeah,
so
which is pretty much, a month.
Exactly.
Okay.
But so like it's a 1 week difference,
It's significant.
It's still insane. Yeah, like I am not saying that to try to discount the way it feels for us to be picking things up 3 weeks later. Because it's still absurd.
Full agree.
Yeah, which is a bummer because I really like the book and I really love Jeff Loeb writing it.
It's just that, like, the baseline of this book feels like it's always going to be very high quality.
Exactly,
Like looking at the decisions that they make with certain things that kind of tilt it off. But
exactly, yeah.
Bring it back. They got a whole 11 more issues, I think. It's a 13 issuer, isn't it? Weird.
It's something weird like that. Do you remember if they were counting the prologue in that?
Ooh, maybe that's it. Maybe it's 12 plus the prologue. I remember when it was first announced, I think we saw that it was 13 and we had great confusion about that.
Yeah, I bet they're counting the prologue.
Yeah, that seems to track. But in any case, we have like 10 more issues.
Yes.
So plenty of time for this series to really develop and be great.
Yeah,
And it's also Jeff Loeb coming on the main Batman book in the near future.
Hyped.
So Jeff Loeb Batman's not going anywhere.
No.
Speaking of the very popular Batman creators, we've got Greg Capullo on Wolverine Revenge. Wolverine Revenge number 3. I didn't get the red label this week, accidentally.
I'm supposed to know how they're different.
I think I know one of the spots where there's certainly a thing.
I have thoughts on the spots that's different too. Yeah.
Target: Deadpool and Omega Red. Wolverine's quest for vengeance leads him from old friends to old enemies, with death in his hands. Jonathan Hickman and Greg Capullo take Logan to the brink, setting the stage for the next unbelievable chapter. Trust us, you'll never guess where this one leads. The writer of Wolverine Revenge is Jonathan Hickman of Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. The penciler is Greg Capullo of Batman, Spawn, and Dark Knight's Metal. The inker is Tim Townsend. The colorist is FCO Placencia, and the letterer is Corey Petit. Katie, we were very high on issue 1. We were fairly low on issue 2. Talk to me about issue 3.
So, in Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, number 2, which we just talked about, we discussed the fact that over this long timeline, not very much is happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like Wolverine has the opposite problem, where he is overcoming too many obstacles too quickly, and it just feels like there's nothing left. He is sprinting. And it kind of, it's one of those things where in the first issue, we were talking about how rad we thought that T-Rex scene was, the dinosaur scene. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I'm glad that we're taking the time to really just vibe with these incredible Greg Capullo, combat sequences. I'm going to speak vaguely, though I think the blurb is fully incorrect that you'll never guess where this is going, because it's a very straight line. Wolverine runs through 3 people in this issue. The 3 of the main people he's looking to get revenge against are taken out in 1 issue. And
he's done all of them now. Not spoilers. I believe he's done all of them now. That's why the next chapter is peace question mark. We've basically finished the story in issue 3.
Which is bonkers. Which is why I was I think that I don't remember who was the mastermind.
That's the guy that was. I think his name is Mastermind, and he was, or something like that. And
he was the very first one.
He was the one taken out without a fight scene.
Okay, that's why I was assuming. I'm okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he wasn't the actual brains behind the op.
No, that was the top guy, and then the idea was him the I guess idea was, oh, now he'll get revenge on the ones who more wronged him, because they either turned on him, or in Sabretooth's case was arch enemy, so it's more personal. The rest of them, but man, they get no time.
They get no time. There's no fight basically between any of them. There's the Colossus one, I think, has a little bit more page time, but even still, and the way that it resolves that's one of the spots where I'm this is definitely different in the Red Band version, and maybe it's more impactful and much cooler in the Red Band version. But I didn't get the Red Band version, and they're selling the non-Red Band version, so I'm going to still say it's a major flaw if it doesn't feel satisfying in the regular book.
Yeah. It's
bonkers how much ground is covered with so little attention paid to that ground. It was very empty, which is not what you want out of a revenge story.
Yeah, it's funny to me you're talking about empty, and you haven't talked about, in my opinion, what was the most empty, which is the Deadpool encounter. Which is real rough, in my opinion, for what? Mm-hmm. I think in the first issue, the Deadpool-Wolverine rivalry actually felt the best out of the things there. That felt really cool, and I had complimented how great that Deadpool felt. And then this feels just back to normal Deadpool, and they do a nice little double fake out that's kind of fun, but it's...
Here's the thing, it would have been more fun if it didn't feel so out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, it felt, and it was just, it was me getting so genuinely annoyed that I thought they were going in the direction they were faking me out into going, and then the actual resolution of, oh no, we're not, was so kind of lame that I didn't feel I really got
exactly
the opposite end of that coin. So just to chat that was my big mistake. I didn't think the Colossus fight, weirdly, I really liked, I think, a lot of the dialogue introing into it, but then it just felt kind of hollow.
Because, I mean, Jonathan Hickman is an incredibly talented writer, so it makes sense that he'd be able to do this, like, kind of lead up to it very well. And Greg Capullo is an incredibly talented artist, so it makes sense that often his, like, visuals are phenomenal. Yeah. Like, Colossus throwing Wolverine was great. Like, grabbing him by the head and just tossing him.
I think Capullo's, like, I think the first issue really did. I think for the thing that's, Capullo's doing for the first time in a while, like, interior-wise, I don't think this is a good use of him. Like, it just doesn't feel like he's doing what I expect out of Greg Capullo action. Like, where's that Spawn artist that did all that crazy shit? Where's that Batman artist that did all that badass shit? Like, it's like, there's moments of it, and then there's moments of, the red band from issue 2 of like, oh, you're driving a motorcycle wheel into somebody's face, but there's no actual thing there. And like, these fight scenes that take 2-3 pages, it's just like, you're not giving him the space to do what he needs to do. So I'm a little disappointed with not Greg Capullo's art, but with what he's been allowed or like utilized.
And that's what I'm saying with like Hickman's incredibly talented writer, Capullo incredibly talented artist, and it's just not done together in a way that it should.
I think and feel free to push back on this, but from what I've learned of Hickman in Ultimate Spider-Man, and obviously I'm very familiar with Greg Capullo's work, I weirdly don't think their styles mesh. I think Hickman is much more like slow build, character driven,
very grounded.
Yeah. And like Capullo's a balls to the walls,
he's a Spawn artist.
Yeah, he's an old school badass, like big bombastic artist. And I don't think it's meshing well. I'd be interested to hear if this is Capullo for the first time acquiescing on not doing the Marvel method, or if this is Hickman trying to work in the Marvel method and that not working out. Because one of those is clearly happening. Yeah. Because Greg Capullo has, for a long time, you can listen to Scott Snyder talk about the fact that he had to work for the first time under the Marvel method, or at least closer to the Marvel method, when they work together. Because Greg Capullo does not like being told specifically what to do in every single page and panel. So I'd be interested to see, like, who's win. Not that they're necessarily bad. I'm sure they wanted to work together, and I'm sure that it's a very great relationship. I'm just, in that creative field, who's, acquiescing or who's compromising and what is leading us to this product.
And what I think is probable is that just both of them are compromising to a point where it doesn't feel like either of them.
Yeah, I'm getting the vibe that it just might not be the best marriage of creators, in my personal opinion. If it works for you, good for you.
And obviously, it could be different on a different book.
Absolutely.
But yeah, wild. Next up on our list, I got nothing else. Okay. Next up on our list is It Happened on Hyde Street.
Devour.
Let's do it. It Happened on Hyde Street. Devour. With an impending wedding, Lily needs to lose weight to fit into her wedding dress, but struggles to shed some pounds. And what's worse, her super-thin grandmother relentlessly disparages Lily's approach, instead lavishing praise upon a quick-fix miracle supplement called Devour, as hawked by the mysterious health guru Miss Goodbody. But is taking it worth the cost? In this extra-length one-shot nightmare, when it comes to Devour, all you need is one. The writer on this is Maytal Zoot. He's their TV writer. Do we know any of the TV writing credits?
Yeah, Stargirl with Jeff Johns, which is I think now.
Awesome.
The connection was made to.
That makes a lot of sense. Good old Jeff Johns. Looking out. The artist here is Layla Lees of Night Terror's Catwoman, Alters, and The Last Book You'll Ever Read. The colorist is Alex Sinclair, and the letterer is Rob Lay. Jay.
Yes.
You were pretty big on Hyde Street #1.
Yeah.
This is obviously a one-shot. We see in the first page a couple familiar faces, and the Cub Scout comes up again in a brief interaction. But we're looking at someone else on Hyde Street. We're looking at Miss Goodbody, who I think we saw on the scoreboard, right?
I believe so.
So the world is expanding. How are you feeling?
The world is expanding. Firstly, like I think I've talked about this with like some of the oversized first issues we've gotten. Like, I just love the Ghost Machine, like quality and pricing. Like, it's really nice. It's like a $6. This is a massive ass one shot. I don't know how long it is, but it's massive. That will go into my slight criticism, which is I don't know that the story needed to be this long. Mm-hmm. But I'm not necessarily gonna, hate a one shot for being longer than it has to be.
That's fair. That's fair. I actually quite liked the length and the story told within that length.
I think it was a little stretched out for me. Not a huge criticism, but let me get to the things I really like here. Which is, firstly, I think Layla Lee's art for this type of story is a phenomenal fit. The way they draw just like the slightly uncomfortable thinness of the mother and grandmother,
very spooky,
is very nice, and I really like that. And the way that they draw like the faces of the slightly unsettling, upper generation is really cool. And Matal Zhu, for her first comic book, I think, well, again, maybe in my opinion, some of the pacing wasn't fully there for the transition from TV to comics. I think the character writing transferred amazingly. Like, I think the character and the characterization of all these characters is so well, and that's really what pulled me in and compelled me. And as I was already really on board with Hyde Street, that helped too. So there's just a lot letting me be really fully immersed in this book. And I think that, honestly, like, its payoff and its transition to the way that it kind of connects to Hyde Street is really satisfying, and it works really well. It does kind of lend a little bit to your theory that Hyde Street might be kind of more of a collection of origins and like stuff of characters.
I think it happens with Hyde Street is going to be that.
Yeah. Which, if we get more it happen on Hyde Street, and that allows the main series to be more following those characters, I think that's really going to be the best of both worlds.
Agreed.
So yeah, I was a fan. I thought this was quite good. Maybe my only slight complaint is I think maybe at some points, especially in the middle, the story dragged a little bit, and it got a little bit repetitive of being like, you have to lose the weight naturally, otherwise there's something maybe creepy lurking, and her being like, I don't know that I can do it. I think we just got maybe one or too many repeats of that same kind of beat with the mother.
That's very fair. I've been swayed to a slight qualm with that, but it wasn't something that bothered me terribly much. I really liked, we had these really good kind of front and end stingers on it of the grandmother figure when she like first discovers this supplement, and then with, how do you feel about one-shot spoilers? Bad, right? So I won't say the end stinger.
Yeah, probably bad.
Because it's a really cool end stinger that I liked a whole heck of a lot.
It's kind of like the whole, thing. It's great.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a very satisfying ending, in my opinion.
It really is. It's a really rad ending.
There's like a double or triple twist or something. Like, it gets, they really start just like spinning you round. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's super, super cool conceptually. Like I said, the character writing was really strong. I liked the way that all of the characters interacted with each other. I thought it was a good, fun one-shot. I enjoy a one-shot. I like the glimpse into the Hyde Street world. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
Is that all?
Kind of a piddling end. I didn't have like a good end.
I thought you were working
sophisticated thought. Which is why I wasn't. Which is, okay, I suppose, is my one problem with it. I feel like it was a good one shot, which can be a gift and a curse for the one shot. Where it's like, I didn't think it was bad, but it's not like a one shot that I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I want to go back and reread it. I was like, it's a good one shot, and it kind of ended. It had a good ending, and it kind of left me with a shrug of like, that was a good one shot.
That's fair. I enjoyed it. Yeah. But do you want to?
I'm sorry, I dragged you down to my energy.
No. I just think I think to some extent, you're right in the sense of like it doesn't like have anything particularly crazy going on in the sense that I think is ripe for more discussion than what we've given it. It's just very solid. Like, it's a very well done but like simple story.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it works. It's a simple story that works. So
exactly, it's a good one shot.
It's a good one shot.
Let's go talk about new number one.
Yeah, /body bags, number 1.
Yes.
Let's do it. /body bags, number 1. When slasher hunters Cassie Hack and Vlad roll in a terminus in search of a killer, they're instantly up to their asses in bounty hunters. Meanwhile, Mac, clown-faced Delgado, needs to school his daughter Panda in the way of body bagging, and it needs to happen quickly, which means a private school lock-in for baggers in training, and a teen-slicing slasher. Yeah, big knives, short skirts, and swear words are gonna start flying. The artist, the writer on this book, is Tim Seeley of Local Man, Nightwing, and He-Man. The artist is Stefano Caselli of Amazing Spider-Man, Ultimate Black Panther, and Avengers. With the art credit is Stefano Caselli with Steve Kurth. I don't know exactly what that means, but Steve Kurth has worked on Iron Man, X-Men, and G.I. Joe. The colorist is Kurt Michael Russell, and the letterer is Crank. And also, just a quick shout out, Body Bags was created by the late Jason Pearson. Katie, we know literally nothing about body bags. I don't know that either of us had ever heard of body bags.
Until literally we started recording, I thought it was a subtitle. I did not realize it was a crossover.
Yeah, it is a crossover. We got the nice little dedication there, which was actually really, really sweet, where it was what was it? Draw in peace. At least in heaven, there are no erasers or deadlines, which I thought was
that's cute.
Really quite sweet.
I didn't read the front matter because I'm a bad person.
Yeah, you are. You don't care about the people who worked on the book.
We talk about them on the podcast. That's when I learned who worked on a book. After Jen puts the tennis page together for me.
After I do the work of putting the tennis together.
Exactly. So I think one of the beautiful things about Hackslash is, at least in the Hackslash that we've read, which has generally been one-shots and short, two-shot series, is how easily they drop you into a situation and you're kind of along the ride with Cassie and Vlad figuring things out as they do. A lot of it feels like, in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect this to be a good storytelling move, it feels like a lot of stuff is happening to Cassie and Vlad. And it's kind of nice because it feels like a lot of that is happening to you too. So they obviously go somewhere looking for a slasher, but it's not like they have an encyclopedic knowledge of people. They're not planning ahead with any sort of real sense. A lot of it is reacting and ingenuity in the moment, which I think
it's kind of the Scooby-Doo method.
Exactly.
Go to the town, something just happens to be up there. Sometimes they do a little bit more they heard something's going on, so it's a little bit less convenient. But it's that typical Avatar: The Last Airbender too. Those traveling heroes who kind of stumble upon whatever's wrong in whatever given town, which is a formula I personally love.
Exactly. And I think that because of all of the lifting needed to introduce the Body Bags universe, we lost a lot of that in this this first issue.
It's a very body bag centric.
It's very body bag centric issue, which I would think is great for fans of body bags, and I'm very excited for them. But as someone who has no frame of reference on it, I think perhaps this is not. It doesn't feel like this is meant to be for new people to find body bags. It jumps in with a lot of universe rules and established characters who we have no frame of reference for. And while it does take the time to give those characters page space, it doesn't feel like it's really an introduction to them. Agreed. If that makes sense. Yeah. And then the parts with Cassie and Vlad are, I'm going to say, few and far between, and far between might not even be correct, because I don't know that there's more than one.
I think there's two.
Cassie has her, breaking into the school moment, but I think that before that, there's just one.
Shows up really the ones.
Yeah, they're in a diner.
There's a moment where Vlad's attacked as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think they each show up twice.
Yes.
For very short break.
Yes. And for someone who was picking this up because of Hackslash, that was a bummer. And I think that as someone who is being introduced to the Body Bags universe, there wasn't enough actual introduction, and they didn't do a phenomenal job with blending the two universes in a way that made me feel like I was along for the story, which is a bummer, because I feel like a private school lock-in is absolute Cassie Hack energy. Absolutely, 100%. Especially after Zoe Thorogood's hack slash back to school, being in the school, like, it feels so rife for amazing hack slash content. And I feel like it just didn't feel like hack slash content.
Yeah, my guess is, because I did know this was a crossover, because I'd seen something about Tim Seeley talking about getting to work on body bags and kind of him talking the estate of Jason Pearson into allowing him to do this. Like, it seems like he's a big body bags fan.
Which is awesome.
My guess is he might have gotten a little overexcited with being able to write body bags, and he can write hack slash whenever the hell he wants to write hack slash. So my guess is he was a little too jazzed to write body bags and didn't really balance it perfectly because of that. And I think you're right. Cassie and particularly Vlad. I don't know that Vlad gets to do anything of particular interest in this issue.
Which is horrible because Vlad is my boy.
Vlad
Love
is fantastic. And like, yeah, but it's like you said, it's not a great intro to body. Like, I wouldn't have minded all this attention being given to body bags as the older property if it was to, in the first issue, go like, here is so that you understand what body bags is. So for the rest of the series, we can do the crossover, and this is the intro issue, and the rest will be the crossover issues. But it felt like a continuation of something that I didn't read. Like this, I think the vibe is like, oh, there's a bunch of bounty hunters and stuff there, which seems super cool and intriguing. And I'm like, oh, that seems like something I'd be super into. But there was just no actual, it felt like, lead in here. So I just felt lost for a lot of the issue.
Yes, agreed.
So, unfortunate.
So probably not one we'll keep pulling on the pod. But not our only new number one for the week. Would you like to go talk about Hour of the Wolf?
Let's do it.
Hour of the Wolf number 1.
I don't know if it's cool.
Neither do I. When Owen Blackwood is called across time to seemingly normal home to destroy a haunted painting, it didn't feel like anything out of the ordinary to this agent of Wolvenheart. Upon arrival, however, Owen finds himself trapped in the very painting he was called to destroy, with only a 1-hour window of time in which to operate. Will Owen be able to save the family from certain death and destroy the painting? Or will he get lost in time and become a cross-dimensional walking ghost? The writer here is Mark London of Battle Cats, Hunt Kill Repeat, and Wolvenheart, also the founder of Mad Cave.
Yeah, and the chair, I don't know what his position, CEO?
And some important position
he
that
runs
an owner would have.
Yeah, he runs the
yes.
publisher.
The artist is Danilo Beyruth of Ghost Rider, Deadpool vs. Gambit, and Howard the Duck. The colorist is Fabi Marquis, and the letterer is Dave Sharp. Jay.
Yes.
Hour of the Wolf.
Hour of the Wolf.
Kind of horror comic-y vibe for right after Halloween.
Yeah, and it's part of this new, what's called the Underworld, I think, is the
you were telling me that.
So this is Mark London's new Shared Universe's return to comics after a couple years, I think, since he redid the first volume of Battle Cats and like the new restored. Restored's not the right word. Remastered, that's the word. Remastered editions of those. So, great to see him back. I'm sure he's been crazy busy with all the like licenses and Mad Cave's growth over the past couple of years. But to see him back actually making comics as somebody who really enjoyed Battle Cats is really great, because I really felt like there was a ton, like as much as I like Battle Cats, like I felt like there was a ton of growth shown in this issue. Like it just felt a whole level extra professional over those books from a writing level. I really, really liked this issue. I thought this was a really cool concept, a really cool intro to, I guess, this universe. But I mean, like, the universe of this book, not the shared universe, unless the shared universe also is all about the Hour of the Wolf, which I doubt it, because this book is called Hour of the Wolf. But yeah, I think the opening was super freaking cool and weird, and I really like the basically, I don't think it's a spoiler because it happens on like page 2. This like creepy haunted painting like sucks him in, and we get the like guy on the painting who has to cut out his facial features with a razor. That's such a good image. And
because he's like faceless, no features on his face, and he takes this razor and like cuts open his mouth and then cuts open one of his eyelids. So spooky.
And I thought the dialogue here was just like phenomenal, because you get like the main character, or not the main character because he goes away, but like the
first
character to start, whose name is Owen. Like basically not wanting to give in to this deal with the devil type thing.
Not Owen, Phil.
Not Owen?
Owen
Phil,
is the actual
that's
Heart feller.
You're absolutely right. Phil, when he's like trying to basically not make a deal with this devil, the devil like latches on to the fact that he's more worried about his daughter than his wife, and is like, I can work with you. And I just love that. That's such like a phenomenal transition into like this character, and it just makes it feel so much more like creepy and off.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I wish it was a little bit more focused on like specifically this haunted painting, because I was super into that. But I still think the Hour of the Wolf concept is super freaking cool, and this idea of like, they go all through these legends and monsters and stuff, and they have this like hour to prevent things from going wrong.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super freaking cool. And then also the issue ender on this was freaking
very spooky. Yes.
So yeah, I was a huge fan of this first issue, and I'm very excited for the series.
Yeah, I was not as jazzed on it. I think that the concept of the Hour of the Wolf is very cool, like you're saying, and moving through time to these different like points of kind of supernatural tragedy and having like the 1 hour timeline. I think that's really great conceptually. And I think it's going to be really great for like a long ongoing series. I don't know what this is production-wise supposed to be. Exactly, but like especially if it's like a tight kind of 3-issue thing or something. Like I think that maybe at a 6-issue, we may be stretching it with 1 hour of time. But like if the painting thing is like 2 or 3 issues, and we like are just following Owen on his journey, I think that'll be really rad. But I also didn't think that the like on the page caption writing of Owen was particularly captivating. I found it a little hammy almost,
That's fair.
Which took a lot of the wind out of my sails. And then the fact that we didn't actually spend a lot of time with Owen was a little disappointing to me.
Family, which is why I said like, that was where I was actually much more interested in, like the wife and her going to burn the painting and all that. Like,
and see, I think that if it was one or the other, or if there was like, I feel like it was a very odd distribution of time spent on things, where there was a lot of time spent on Phil's problem with the painting, and then a good chunk of time spent on the wife and daughter coming to burn the painting, and then a chunk of time spent on Owen, and then kind of like our little stinger at the end. I feel like it was just kind of an odd distribution in a way that didn't feel super flowy for me to read.
I don't know that I fully vibe with it. Like I feel like it's the Phil intro into his family stuff feels very logical, and then the idea is more like there's the intercut of Owen stuff as like your like
for sure. Yeah, I think that my thing is that I would have wanted Phil's thing to probably be a little shorter, and then for the family to like have done more than like exposit in the car and then arrive and not do anything.
That's fair. I really liked the way that a lot of the family's writing was. They felt very real. Is always a weird word for like horror stuff, because I don't know that anybody acts real in horror settings. Like there is the vibe of like, he hunted down this painting that everybody knows is like, meant to like lead people to their deaths and stuff, and then he killed himself. Let me go to that painting and like take out like there's the like very horror element.
I think he tried to kill her. I'm pretty sure that he tried to kill her, and then the cops came along, and either he killed himself or they shot him. I'm pretty sure that he was supposed to.
I
think that he was trying to bring her to the painting to sacrifice her.
That tracks there.
Yeah.
The way that she said like heard the gunshot, and like saw the body just made me like get the suicide vibe. But in any case, I do think you're right. But in any case, the idea of like, okay, then he did this super weird thing and ended up dead, and like now I should go to that painting that like that's a very horror-y thing.
It is.
I just really like the way the family was written. But yeah,
super fan.
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Are you ready to make your pull list rec for the week?
I am. I'm going to toss it to you first, because I love doing that.
Okay.
I love putting you on that.
That's so nice. I feel like I should be able to toss it to you first.
You toss it to me like for several weeks in a row because you were like very indecisive. So now I'm just like I'm pushing it back. I'm pushing it back. But...
I'm torn between two. You'll never guess which ones.
I know which.
And I think I'm going to give it to Hyde Street this week. It was a good one shot, and because it's a one shot, it's very accessible. I think that the second issue of Batman almost made it up there, but it has me very worried. So I'm not gonna give it to it this week. Yeah. I liked Devour. I think that the characters were written super well. Really? It was a kind of standard type of story, but it's standard for a reason because it can be done well, and this was done well.
This was very good. So Katie's Polar's recommendation happened on Hyde Street Devour. My Polar's recommendation is going to be keeping it very very close to what we just did. It's going to be Hour of the Wolf. I really like that issue 1. I'm very compelled for this series. I think it has a lot of legs to do a lot of interesting stuff. Weirdly, in a very similar vein to Hack Slash, in terms of like formula. In terms of like dropping into supernatural tragedy
stuff,
and I like the imposed time limit. That's a fun. That's a fun thing.
It's a very fun mechanic. Yeah,
a lot of fun with. I do wish Owen had been a little bit more compelled to me, because he is going to be the main character. But I liked following this family. I thought that was fun. I really liked Hour of the Wolf. That's my pull list recommendation. Get Hour of the Wolf. Get Katie's recommendation. It happened on Hyde Street Devour. But we still have one more segment.
That's right. We're headed to the Creator Corner. All right, gang. Here we are in the Creator Corner, where we take a moment, sit back, relax, talk about being writers, talk about the industry. Jay's gonna fall off his little stool if he sits back any farther. And we're out of October, so Jay is freed from my
out of topics, and I was like, "What the fuck do you mean?"
Yeah, this is actually the final Creator Corner. I can't be bothered to think of any more.
Have you made the end of your list? Like, have you been just like eternally adding more to the list? Or
I have not added a single thing to the list since we together made that list.
Yeah, yet it's been a year.
Yeah, because a lot of the ideas on it are bad. But it has been pretty much a year. What was it? Do you remember what the official 1 year day was?
I think it's the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. Like I just got the alert, I think, yesterday that our Twitter account was made exactly a year ago yesterday. So, we made everything before we launched everything, so it makes sense now. All the accounts are made a year ago from yesterday.
Yeah, maybe we'll cobble together something special for our 1 year anniversary.
We'll put something up, even if it's short, whatever.
Exactly, we'll do something. Because oh my god, a year. But no, I am never out of ideas. I just need the panic of a deadline to make me think of them. So while we were looking at our polls, I came up with the idea for this Creative Corner. Inspired partially by what we talked about in Hour of the Wolf. It's something that's come up a good few times on the pod, and it's something that I know that you quite like. It is the wandering hero structure, which I think you can also kind of apply to a Monster of the Week structure. There's some, I think, very specific and pedantic differences, but they tackle a lot of the same stuff. But we're looking at incredibly episodic type of storytelling. Something like Hack Slash, where they drop into a town, take care of the slasher there, move on. Maybe things come up later, but it is generally the format of this week is this monster. Like classic Buffy, Smallville, stuff like that. So Jay, when approaching a Monster of the Week Wandering Hero type of show, what do you think is like the most important thing for someone writing in that format?
Well, this is great timing, because the most recent project that I have been working on is my first time doing a true, like episodic wandering hero type story, and it's a lot of fun. I think it's one of the most fun things you'll do in comics, because it's kind of lower pressure, because you don't have to be like, I need this many issues. It's like, do whatever you can do, and it's also kind of more everlasting, which is really fun. Like, oh, you could do an anthology story with them here, you could do this with them there, whatever. I think that's very fun to be like very open, and this is all leading to the fact that they're versatile is the big challenge and like thing that you need to focus on when you're creating them, which is how do I create this character that's very versatile, that's very like able to just go on different stories? Because this is, I think I've said before, think of kind of the story with your character. Think of, how your character connects to the story. This is the inverse of that. This is it flipped on its head. It's like, no, you just need a character first, and your cast first. It can be, I'm a big fan of the trio, but it can be one character, 3 characters, 5 characters, whatever. Like, this is very much come up with them very independently of the story, because every story is going to be unique. It's not, they are not going to be tied so intrinsically to this story. It's very much, like hack slash. Like, no, like Cassie isn't tied to whatever villain is there every week. It's like, no, you come up with, what if we had somebody whose job was to kill slashers? That's a very evergreen idea that could be applied many times. So I think with this kind of story, even more so, I think comics in general, you're leaning a lot on concept and like sellability.
Yes.
But that is turned up to 11 with like a story of the week, an episodic, a one-shot type character, because it's all concept and character. It's all about that character or team or whatever you're building and whatever their concept is. That is carrying 90, 95, 97.5% of what you are doing here. So it's just, you're really cranking that up. So you really need to take your time to create this character and concept and how it's going to be this sort of episodic story. Anything else you want to throw in there?
I think you hit exactly what I would call the most important part, which is your hero, because ultimately you want someone who people want to read, because they're not reading for the plot, they're reading for how your character interacts with this mechanic. And so I think making a hero who is both likable on their own, but I think it's also important for them to have like non-debilitating flaws, so they have ways to have conflict within themselves during the story. Like Cassie, with all the love in my heart, because I love Cassie Hack, her flaw is that she's kind of a bitch. Like, like she is not going to be nice to the people that she saves, and that makes it interesting to read her.
I think a lot of the wandering hero or like episodic hero, a lot of them are a little bit like morally off in a slight way. Like
they're kind of detached.
I go to or like not it doesn't have to be detached, but like it's one of those things where like they're not like, it's not a Superman type character that you make. You're not making like a good, or even a Batman. You're not making a Batman, like you're not making somebody who has like a holier than thou attitude. You're making somebody who's kind of like a little bit rough, or a little bit like they need to grow into their hero shoes, because somebody through that episode, because it gives you like a very repeatable but still progressible story of them becoming a better person. And
that's what I was getting at, is that you don't have that clean shape of narrative character arcs that you get with like a 6-issue miniseries. It's, you need your character to both feel complete and like they're growing every single adventure. And there can obviously be across the adventures growth. And I think there are some very easy markers for that with an episodic adventure. Like if you come back to something and they respond differently, you can kind of chart that growth. But their growth is likely not going to be the point of the story you're telling.
And also, it's probably not going to move that fast if it does move at all. Like this is, I think you go to the like Dan Harmon story circle as like your very basic. Like you want them to basically end each story where they started it.
Yeah.
Like, but you do want to feel like something happened. You don't want people to feel like, nothing happened. But you want to set them back up. Like, okay, was somebody captured? They're no longer captured. They're now free again at the end of this. Like, what did something happen to our main character? Like, change their appearance or their thing? Like, did they, morph into like a werewolf? Like, okay, that needs to be gone by the end of this story. Like, whatever it is, whatever your big change, you need to kind of undo or resolve by the end of the story, so that somebody who read your first story can jump to your 8th story and they're not going to be like, how did the character get from, and like there are slight changes, like maybe they gain a girlfriend or something, or there's an extra member of the cast. Like that's all fine and dandy, but you don't want to be like, you don't want them to jump in and be like, wait, how is this the same character from this story if they're all one shots? You know? I jumped to me, Ben 10 is one of the best things of this. You go back to classic Ben 10, like he's a little shit, and that's like every single episode is some version of him learning like responsibility and what it truly means to be a hero, and like doing things for others versus his own selfish wants of like, he wants the new Sumo Slammers game or the new Sumo Slammers card or whatever, and it's like, no, he has to put that aside and let it get destroyed so that he can help people, whatever. It's very basic, but like you get very steady progression on that, but it is still, you can do that same kind of lesson in many different ways. And not every single episode will be that lesson, but like having something like that for your growth, and for Cassie, it's more like, making connections to people or whatever.
Right.
You have all your things like that. So, I think having that kind of character flaw that you can kind of chip away on in every thing is important, but also kind of a return to form is an important. Dude, look up Dan Harmon talking about the story circle, and it's genuinely like just really.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it says something that Dan Harmon, some of his best work is his TV work, and like I think almost exclusively TV work. I mean, and that's where the story circle comes from. Exactly,
like, Rick and Morty are always exactly back. Sometimes it'll be 2 or 3 episodes if they're going to do something long, but almost always it's back exactly where they started, so that you can tell another,
Or
story.
if you want to watch something better, Community. Rick and Morty is fine. It's just easy to throw strays at. But that's one of those things where you have that ensemble, and they all have like very distinct flaws, and you can see how those flaws inform them every single episode. And like, it's not repetitive to watch someone struggle with the same thing. If they struggle with it in the same way, it gets repetitive. And I think that that's where the other side of the monster of the week really comes into play, which is the monster of the week. Which is why I think it's one of the most fun formats to play with, because it is just like boundless creativity of like, all right, we get to do something new and fun every single week, and it's done with kind of an understanding of success. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of an episode of Buffy, you don't often feel like Buffy is going to not figure out how to deal with this monster.
Which also makes it all the more impactful when in these formats, like, suddenly deep into them, your characters fail. And it just feels so much more impactful because you've had this history of like, no, wait, it's supposed to be resolved and fixed in this one chapter. And then it doesn't. And that's really, I think.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember what creator corner we were in when we were talking about this, but success doesn't always need to look like getting everything you want. Like, just because you know that, Red Sonja is going to kill the werewolf doesn't mean you know that the werewolf is actually this old lady's son who she wanted Red Sonja to kill. That's like, killing the man without knowing that that's what she was doing because she was trying to kill a beast is like a pretty big L for Red Sonja. Like, that sucks emotionally. In a good way as a reader, in a bad way as a wandering hero. But it's that sense of you can defeat the monster, but the problems the monster created or exacerbated or revealed can still be there. So like, even if you win, you don't have to like win the entire day. Which is a cool thing with your monsters of the week, because you can have that variation in there of how much your hero gets to succeed.
Totally agree. And that's also where you get to like recurring villains, where it's like, well, maybe they saved the town or the person who was captured or whatever, but that doesn't mean they thwarted the villain or were able to defeat the villain. Exactly. They aren't coming back. So it's very much it's a very ripe storytelling device, because you get to do kind of whatever you want. It's like, oh, this is a villain who's going to be killed at the end of this issue, and then this is a villain who's going to vanish at the end of the issue, and I'm going to leave that stewing for a while, and then eventually maybe we'll come back or whatever. So yeah, it's very open for what you're going to do in the antagonistic force. And that's another thing. Like, it doesn't have to be your monster villain of the week doesn't have to be a monster or villain. It can be something more like a challenge or a problem or you know, an entire town that has this problem. I'll go to Avatar. Like Avatar has the one episode where instead of like the town having a villain or somebody attacking them, it's that town that believes in that like fortune teller. Yeah. And so they're not protecting themselves against the volcano erupting. And like that episode works so well as them wandering into a town because it has no bearing on the overarching plot. You know, like they progress Aang and Katara's relationship in a fairly big way in that episode. But overall, like the problem is very specific to that week. And it's not a villain. It's not something that they like kill or anything like that. But it's just a really good use of the characters in this like episodic method. It's like, okay, these towngoers are fucking idiots. There's the internal conflict of Sokka being like, no, don't you two buy into this stupidity. What is wrong with you people? And then the realization of like, oh no, they're really going to just lead themselves to their own destruction if we don't do something. And then they have to intervene and you get your kind of resolution, which is them saving the town from the volcano. And, you know, for our win that isn't a full win, we learned the town did not learn anything because they were not destroyed and thus the fortune teller was right. So
yes, phenomenal writing.
There's your, you know, kind of a vibe there. I think Avatar, weirdly, despite being one of the most like serialized children's shows, also is just a phenomenal like
it really is
wandering hero thing because they go into with that overarching plot driving them forward. They go into a new town every single episode or a new location. It's not always a town. Sometimes it's, you know, whatever. But they go into a new spot and deal with whatever that place's problems are. Sometimes because somebody's looking for them, and sometimes just because the town has a problem.
And I think that that actually bridges well into another point about these wandering hero stories is so much of them are so much of the like success of them is built on like tone and world building because you
absolutely.
Inherently through having a monster every week you have all of these different angles that you're looking into this world that you've built
building it up quickly.
Exactly, like with something like Smallville, the way that they deal with like the weird, I think a lot of the stuff stems from the kryptonite in Smallville, right?
Yeah, it's all the they even I think they don't call it kryptonite for a really long time. They call it like K-asteroids or something weird like that.
Whatever
like,
it is.
Weird.
And so like it's all of these kids like turning into weird things. And
also Katie throwing stones at Rick and Morty and then holding up Smallville is like the
I'm not holding up Smallville, to be clear.
I'm just saying, I got those. I enjoy Smallville a ton, but there are plenty of stones.
Throwing stones at Rick and Morty from a pedestal of Community. Yeah, so much of that, like you said, with the Avatar, the way that we like see the way that these different towns interact.
I'll throw stones from Avatar. That's a high pedestal.
There you go. You can throw stones at Community from Avatar. You can throw stones at anything.
Almost anything from Avatar.
Exactly.
That's a high fucking watermark.
Man, you can throw them so easily if, like me, you'd think you would be an earthbender.
Katie thinks she's tough.
Sure. Jay thinks he's Mako. There's a little Legend of Korra action for you.
Korra.
That's fair. It was. I have many gripes with it.
It was. It doesn't finish.
That's the weird thing. I don't think I'm tough. I think I'm Bolin. All I want is to be Bolin from Korra. But in any case, the way that you do world building through your monsters of the week, through your wandering heroes, you're inherently interacting with so many different parts of the world from so many different like perspectives and angles that your world building really becomes important.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's like a natural processes from the way the story works, or do you think it's something that you want to have like laid out and figured out ahead of time?
It's a little bit of both. I think a lot of times these things do very naturally build up worlds from like I keep going back to Ben 10 because I love Ben 10. Like I think a lot of Ben 10's world building was very accidental, where they kind of started stumbling upon things and they were like, oh, you know what? This is cool. We're just gonna make more and more of this have to do with aliens because that's the cool stuff we keep stumbling onto. But like I think you need some sort of, you know, you need to know what you do. You, like, don't just start like putting things together without being conscious of like the way they fit together. Like, don't forget that you did something 3 issues ago just because they're all one shots and be like, oh yeah, like here's the 4th straight fire villain that has nothing to do with each other, but they're all fire powers. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't be doing that because you're stepping on your own toes. But Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would say that you need to be conscious of is like you don't need to have everything figured out, especially in a villain of the week thing. You don't need your whole world built already.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just be very conscious of like how does this fit into the other things that I've already built? Because just because they're episodic, and I think this is actually something that, especially in comics, are a little bit better. But comics do it. I think it's just it takes longer for comics to forget what they've done and do it. Whereas like TV, because you have all these different writers and stuff, I think a lot quicker they'll kind of contradict themselves. But comics do it too, just over a longer period. Like, you don't want to just start stepping on yourself and being like, oh yeah, that thing that I said, like, yeah, no, that actually was wrong, and this is what we're doing now, or like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that villain who was, say you have your like Void, you know, I'm trying to think of the Superman term for why can't I think of what it's called, the place that he sends everybody to,
the Phantom Zone.
The Phantom Zone. Thank you. The Phantom Zone. It's because I had the Ben 10 version in my head.
That's so fair. That's so fair.
And I was like, I can't think of what the
You can't keep talking about Ben 10.
I can't just keep talking about Ben 10. So if you have your Phantom Zone, right? And like you sent the huge villain there, you know, 5 issues ago, and now your character gets trapped there. And you just don't do anything with that. It's like a missed opportunity. It feels weird. You know, it's that thing of like, if you set something up, somebody's here, then when later you're there, they should be there. You know,
and I think
has that continuity.
Yeah. In your kind of similar example there with, like, you've sent the big bad to the Phantom Zone, if, you know, 3 issues later or like 5 issues later or something, it's like, oh, this character has broken out of the Phantom Zone. It's like you have to be very careful with that. Because okay, if this random monster of the week can break out of the Phantom Zone, why can't this, like, end of...
Why can't Zod?
Exactly, yeah. And, like, obviously you can do something with that. Like, oh, this person vibrates at the frequency of the universe. And then you can maybe do something super interesting later where it's like, oh, you got that person back in the Phantom Zone, and now Zod is harnessing their power to get back out. Like, you can do cool stuff with that, but you have to be very careful when you are establishing, like, truths for your world.
Yeah.
That later things don't make that not make sense.
Yeah, if you are establishing rules, you want to follow your own rules. It's the thing of, like, some people really don't, like, grasp this, because you see a lot of times, I think more with fans than with creators, like, oh, you can accept Superman flying. Why can't you accept that this doesn't follow that rule that you established 4 issues ago? It's like, because
in the universe, Superman can fly.
Yeah, I can buy into the rules of their universe so long as they follow their own rules. You know, like, it's very important that you follow your own rules and you don't just go, well, it's fiction, I can just break whatever this thing I just set up was. But I'm interested, like, how do you as a like crazy outliner and planner, do you build out, even for like a villain of the week thing, are you building out the lore of this universe in like a huge scale before
I think
you do
that
multiple stories?
As the point where I would approach is where these monsters are coming from. So, like, the K-Metal, like in Buffy with the Hellmouth, like, there's a reason that all these things are happening here. And if you develop that reason, I'm not sure, what is the reason in Ben 10 that all these aliens are here? Is there a reason?
I mean, like, kind of your starting reason is that, like, a bunch of them were after the Omnitrix, and that's...
that totally works.
But then, like, after that, it's just a lot of, like, oh, he comes upon, and this was the thing before, like I said, they stumbled upon the fact that the alien stuff, like, after the Omnitrix worked a lot better because it was more connected. Yeah, there was a lot of just like, he just goes to a town and they have some sort of mutant or villain.
Yeah, and see, that type of thing I think would stress me out immensely. But having something like, okay, the Hellmouth is here, and we have our Slayer, rad. I know that the Hellmouth is the source of most of my monsters of the week. And, like, every once in a while you could do something funky where it's like, oh, they're here for a different reason, so the way that your hero operates doesn't work. And that's, like, a fun way to shake it up. But when most of your stuff is coming from the same, like, hub of power, because most of the time with the villains of the week, they're not going to be just, like, a mugger, you know? Like, they're going to have something more to them. And so you see it with... like the Flash too. It's like the superpowered people are going to be superpowered people. So knowing that most of his enemies are going to be cut from that cloth, and like you said, follow the same rules across this universe. I think that once you have those rules, that's the type of outlining that I find very important with
That's fair.
less structured stuff, because then you make sure that you are putting things in that make sense.
I'm gonna lightly push on the fact of like, I think it's absolutely, if you're gonna have something that's like creating your villains or your power people, but there's very much the Conan, Red Sonja, Hack Slash, like all these stories where it's like they are not going to be related to whatever the villains are of
sure.
You know, and like they're not going to be created by some one event like Flash, Smallville, whatever, like these things that have the one thing that creates all the villains. It's like, I don't think you need to sit there and be like, these villains are all going to be connected in X way. Like, there is very much Avatar, whatever, of the, like, they're going to wander into towns and these towns are going to have problems or whatever.
But I think the kind of overarching thing for me is they're all coming from the same universe, is what I'm getting at. Like, in Avatar, we know the world that they live in. And because we know the world that they live in, we can make them make sense in that world. With something like Red Sonja or Conan, it's like, okay, we know the like genre that they live in.
Yeah.
So we know that there's going to be like, you know, I don't know, a giant tiger or a werewolf or something like kind of bestial, but there's not going to be like a cyborg there. And so I think that's kind of what I mean by like having your source, whether that's a literal in-universe source or just like the universe source.
No, that's super. I just want to clarify because, like, everything has to be coming from the same literal source in the way that it does in Smallville with the Flash, which works really freaking well. Don't get me wrong. There's a great way to do like, oh, this event happened and it created a lot of literally Flash and Smallville both do it in basically the exact same way, just with different events where it's like, oh, the same thing that like in Clark's case brought Clark here, and in the Flash's case gave the Flash his powers, also gave all these other people powers. So it makes sense that all of this is starting at the same time. Like that's very like, oh yeah, that works really well. But that doesn't have to be how your thing works. You can have things that are like, oh, in this world, if you get into an accident, this is one of those worlds where accidents give you superpowers. So it's fine that like they're gonna be, in your very like DC Marvel sense, like this person who fell into a pit of eels is gonna get electric powers because that's how this world works. It doesn't have to all be directly connected. Don't do the eels thing. It's stupid, but I think
the eels thing is fun. Do it. Okay, I have one more question for you before we wrap up, and that's a question of format. Because comics are very episodic artifacts, like out in the world. But I think that producing like a one-shot is maybe a little trickier now than it was like 20 years ago.
It's much trickier. There's not a lot of publishers that want to do one-shots right now.
Exactly. But then we see things like webtoons and webcomics where it's like these are inherently going to be like, I'm not going to say easier to produce, but like easier to get out there, like you're not doing a Kickstarter for it or trying to pitch at publishers. And they also are very rife for episodic things, like with the way that they release. So where do you think Monster of the Week, Wandering Hero stories kind of live and land in the modern comic landscape?
Weirdly, I'm going to push back slightly. I don't think they have a great place on Webtoon. I don't think the Webtoon format's made for episodic things. Webtoon is made for very much stretched out stories.
That's fair.
Because they want that constant engagement over a long period. I do think something like Global Comics is built really well for one-shots, and I know one-shots have done quite well in Global Comics, so that's it. But honestly, like, you glossed over there, I think Kickstarter loves one-shots. Like, I think that's a phenomenal, like, Kickstarter, Fund My Comic, what's the Zoop, like those crowdfunding like are such a good place for one shots because it is just like get it done, like boom, you don't
get it done, like just one issue.
Yeah, it's not like how do I I got issue 1 funded, but then I have to worry about getting 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like no, just get your one issue funded, boom, and now it's done, and then you could potentially bring it to publishers after that. And there are publishers that do one-shots as well. I feel the need to throw that out. You got, like your Band of Bards, your Antarctic Press, your Keen Spots. If you get to Dark Horse or Image, which is obviously an uphill battle, but those two do one-shots. Like there are places for your one-shots.
Yes.
I think if you're going to do a digital webtoon format, you have to very much commit to there are going to be multiple chapters of this wandering hero thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you even need to like segment it further. So instead of it being like, oh, I'm going to do my 24-page one shot that is this villain of the week, and then jump to the next 24-page villain of the week, it's going to be like, no, you're going to do 6 or 8 pages of this 24, 32-page thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to still chunk it off. So it's not going to be so much like one shot.
Sure.
It's going to be like little small parted off stories in your wandering thing, and then you need to be committed to like, I'm not just doing one, I'm doing 2, 3. Specifically talking about webtoon, because webtoons are very like, webtoon is built to be a ongoing thing,
right? And I think that's one of the reasons that I think that it works for this type of thing, because even if you're doing it in the smaller chunks, I think something like Kickstarter with like a wandering hero or a monster of the week type of book isn't my favorite path to take for it, because like part of the appeal of the monster of the week is that like weekly form, not necessarily weekly, but like you're maybe putting out a Kickstarter book if you're incredibly aggressive like twice a year.
There are people who do well more than twice a year. But
I believe you. I guess I'm just not seeing many of them. But I think it's one of those things where having
more of the non-aggressive people do like twice a year. I think the aggressive people are doing like 4 to 6 a year.
Okay, sure. I'll take that then. But that's kind of why I wanted to move away from the talk of one shot, because these aren't really. These are a different beast than one shots,
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is like the nice thing about these is that you can start them as a one shot.
Right, yeah, like you said, like putting them in anthology stores, they're very versatile for that.
They're very versatile.
But I think that the format really
as a one shot. If you're looking at just as a like villain of the week that you are willing to commit to not just doing one shot, then there's no reason you can't take it to any number of publishers, because you can pitch something as a 4-issue miniseries. That doesn't mean that it has to be one story across those 4 issues. You can sit there and go, literally, there's a little bit of an overarching story, but what is that? What's that wandering story that we read through Dark Horse? I am flubbing on the name now of the animal, the raccoon,
William of Newberry.
William of Newberry is a very kind of wandering character type thing. So like you could absolutely then go to any publisher if as long as you present the idea in the way that it is and you're okay with it being a 1, 2, 3, 4 thing. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Wandering Barbarian is absolutely not like a one-shot thing. I just think, especially if you're an indie creator, that's typically going to be the best way to kind of solve it. Like, like here's your one story. Great, you like it? Okay, here's the next adventure. Great,
that's super fair. Yeah,
that's what Hack Slash did. Hack Slash didn't come out as like we're a series. It was like here's a one shot.
Right.
Here's another one shot. Here's another one shot. Here's another one shot. Finally, okay, you seem to like it. Here's the series. So, I just wanted to like give that, because I think
it's
that's your
I think it's just a trickier type of format to pitch and have picked up.
Yeah,
in a traditional
I think
sense,
it's much tougher to sit there and be like, here's the 4-issue miniseries, and I want to tell 4 stories, because then you're especially giving them like whatever you're showing them is not actually like fully what they're getting. It's like you need to trust that like not only is this story I'm selling on you good, but the other stories that I'm gonna do within this are also good. Unless you're doing pitch pages from each of the episodic episodes, which is just a huge undertaking.
Yes,
but yeah, how would you put out? Because you said you like the webtoon.
I think that doing it in a webcomic format actually works super duper well. I think that you may have to adapt the way you're telling the story a little bit, like you said, breaking it down into chapters. But I think that that's totally fine, especially if you're putting it out consistently, because I feel like with something like a Monster of the Week format, so much of the, like cred for the story comes from the breadth of the story. Because it's inherently, if your like hero isn't connected to your villain, there is an ocean floor, like it's a deep floor, but there's only so much you can do where, you don't have that interpersonal conflict. So I think a lot of the like storytelling value of the Monster of the Week comes from that catalog of monsters and building out the universe through these monsters. So being able to put it out consistently like that feels like a very good move for me, where people do feel like they're kind of along for the ride.
But that's the thing. Like I think you hit on, like you have to be willing to put it out consistently.
Yes,
and like that's the main thing that I think is the kind of hang up of it. Like doing anything digitally is a much bigger commitment, because you're not going to get far if your thing comes out for a month and then it disappears. Like, it needs to be
exactly
like that. My plan for my, I told you, like, that I'm working on that right now, which is why this is very funny timing, is to do 8-page chapters, either once or twice a month. Like, that's kind of the plan forward with that. So, we're doing it digitally, not through Webtoon, because I don't think that's the best.
That's fair. I just use Webtoon as my general abbreviation for digital comics.
I just, like, Webtoon has a very specific fan base that I think these very drawn out but connected stories, and I don't know that the, like, villain of the week format is built for Webtoon.
Very valid, yeah.
But
I was more so just going for web-based comic.
Yeah, no, which is super fair. I felt the need to establish.
This is why
somebody who's done a Webtoon that was canceled. Like, what seems to work with Webtoons, the drawn out stuff tends to get a much greater response. Like, stuff that has cliffhangers, stuff that leads into the next thing, like
things that don't finish that Dan Harmon story circle.
Yeah, like, you think the engagement stuff on that is ridiculously different than anything that actually has. And like, I sit there thinking of being the good creator for people. Like, here's your ending of this story before we go to next week's story. Nobody goes to next week's story.
They hate it.
Whereas, like, you leave them open on that dangling, like, how the fuck did you think you could end a story there? And they all come back, they all comment, they all like, they all engage, they all talk about it. Like, it's just, it's what that format is built for or marketed to people for. So, you got to be cognizant of what a certain market and release method, like, entails.
Yes.
What I'm trying to say.
But I think that we've talked enough about our Wandering Barbarians. Yes.
Yeah.
As we are wont to do. So let's real quick jump into what are we going to be talking about next week. We've got 4 books coming.
Yes.
4 new number ones.
4 new number ones, as we had literally nothing on our poll list continuing for next week, which is wild. Do you think that this was the week 5 and not the week 1 of the new month? Very weird.
Very weird.
But we're going to be jumping into Rome Eternal number 1, which I think is a Dark Horse book. Am I getting that right? I think.
You're the one who pitched it.
No, that's wrong. It's Magma. That's Magma. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's Magma. Rome Eternal number 1 is
Rome
Magma.
with
Rome
ROME.
number 1, I believe, is Dark Horse, which is why I got that.
It is.
I think. So yeah, Living Hell is the Dark Horse book that we're reading the number 1 of. Then we have the Fade number 1, which is
Boom.
Boom. And we then are getting one more DC all-in. We're going to be reading the new Batgirl number 1, which is actually a Cassandra Cain Batman.
It sure is.
Cassandra Cain is Batman. Cassandra Cain, Batgirl.
She would be. She would kick ass as Batman. Dick doesn't want it. Damien doesn't deserve it. Cassandra Cain should be Batman. Look, leave my hot take alone.
I didn't say a damn word. Why don't you tell the people what they can check out that we have recently put up?
Yes, this past weekend, a weekend early, we had our Strange Saturday Super Show where we read Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. So excited to have read this on the pod because I think we're both very hyped to read the second series when it starts coming out next year.
I think that's why we really wanted to get it out there, because Katie was hyped on it, and we thought this was a good way to get me on it before the new series comes out, and I was not disappointed by the book.
But don't get too excited, it won't be until 2025. So, like, this isn't an under the what?
We're 2 months away. Month and 3/4 away.
You got me.
I'm sure it's not going to be in January, but 2025 itself is not very far away.
Fair enough. It feels like an eternity. But yeah, and this coming weekend, we have our very exciting first actual installment in our DC Absolute Universe Fantasy Football League. Jay is Team Absolute Batman. I am Team Absolute Wonder Woman. We're reading all 3 of the number 1s that came out, and we'll be going through full spoilered discussions of them, telling you everything that happened, and scoring them according to our fantasy football chart. We don't have a prize for who wins, but we'll cook something up.
Our plan was to do a prize once we had kind of worked out the kinks, because our plan is what
we still need a reward for winning. Winning deserves rewards, Jay.
That's fine. Why don't we'll find a cool, like, Dick Grayson comic book to split the cost of, and whoever wins gets it.
I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's our, or Teen Titans. It doesn't have to be specific. It's just a thing that we both really enjoy. So it'll be like a Teen Titans Dick Grayson comic book, and we'll give that to the
yes,
victor.
Absolutely.
It'll be a signed copy of Robin's #1, and that'll be the prize.
Anyway, that's gonna take us to the end of the episode this week. We don't talk about Robins here.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Tim Silly. You've been getting.
I've said it once. I'll say it again. The fact that they wrote a comic where Dick Grayson said the words Dungeons and Dragons and I didn't like it is like a horror story to me.
Katie's scathing review here.
Yes.
In any case, we're so sorry for the negativity at the end of the episode. Hopefully that didn't turn you guys off of the podcast, and we will see you next week. Comic.